Okay, you've given up lighting as far as people will allow you to give it up. Okay, you ain't dead yet, my friend. So don't be surprised if the phone rings. But you clearly it's moving on into real pastures new.
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of happy that here we are. As I say, we're recording this now. So I guess the starting point is, can you just run us through the decision that you took? What was behind the decision? Was it a case of now's the
Sure.
time to get out, or now's the time to move on? I mean, there is a difference between those two things.
It was for a variety of different reasons, as normal when these are just coming along, and some of them were personal, some of them were lifestyle, and some of them were to do with the cycle that you go through when you kindly say I'm at the top of the game, but when you've been leading a group or a department or a profession or a company for 13 years, you go through cycles.
Yeah.
And I kind of got to a position where if I didn't move on, I was going to lose some key people. Because it was dead man's shoes and I was the dead man. And I couldn't, I felt that they deserved their time in the sun, and B, I couldn't face going through that whole process of building it up again from scratch.
Yeah. Okay.
That was one reason. Second reason was I've always intended to have three careers. And actually, this third one has come along slightly later than I anticipated it to come along. I was doing and have done for a long time a lot of board work. So for this charity for 4 years, I was on an NHS board for 2 years.
Right.
Before that, I was on the ILP board. Before that, I was a school governor. And it's something I've done ever since I was injured, and I've loved. And I really wanted to do more of that kind of work. And that was the plan, really. I'm 59. The plan was at 60 to kind of tail down, do more consultancy work, ramp up the board work, and kind of drift into retirement. But this opportunity came along. I just thought, this is just too good, too exciting. The organization is, we'll talk more about it later on, but the organization is led by a very charismatic and inspirational character. And he has been in place for 4 years. He's in the process of writing the new 5-7 year strategy for the organization. Here I was presented with an opportunity to exercise my strategic muscles, to look at some kind of long-term visioning, strategy making, and then implement it. And those opportunities don't come along very often.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the pull, and some of the push. But I'm going to be honest as well. I had my time in construction, and it was becoming ever more frustrating. A lot of the joy had gone. The position that I held was more to do with resource management and marketing than it was to do with design, research, development, and working in commercial design. The commercial pressures of the 3 month cycle of you never know what you're going to do in 3 months' time, and you always have to win it, and you always have to, when you are operating in a company like BDP, you're continually having to justify the number of staff you've got,
Of course.
why you're there, what you're doing, and all of that, and that just got wearing.
Mm. I get that. I get that. I mean, even in my own case, with a small studio, there reaches the point where you go, I'm not doing enough creative work here. And you realize that you've become a manager. And that's
Yeah,
not what you set out to do.
the things I said, I mean, okay, I'll give you another for instance. I've always applied to myself the lottery test. I don't buy the lottery tickets, but the test is, if I won the lottery tomorrow, would I carry on doing what I'm doing?
Mhm.
And the answer for most of my career has been a big, big yes.
Yeah.
For the last 5 years, it's been no, but it's yes again.
Yeah. Well, there we are. That'll do.
So
I
that's kind of, if it was a nutshell, it was that. And I got the sense that for quite a long while, I was operating, I was keeping lots of plates spinning at about 70%, rather than excelling at any one thing or two or three things. I was kind of okay. I was kind of getting away with lots. And I wasn't in a position where I could concentrate on excelling in any one thing, because if one plate drops, the whole thing comes crashing down.
Yes. Okay, tell us about this thing that you're doing then, because tell us a little bit about what the Spinal Injury Association is about for those who don't know, and where you're going to slot in to the organisation.
Okay, so the Spinal Injuries Association is its purpose is to be the guiding expert voice for all those with a spinal cord injury, and its vision is that everyone with a spinal cord injury should have a fulfilled life. And in this country, sadly, that's not the case. There's all sorts of barriers. And the organisation there is to make sure that every person with one, irrespective of their age or background, has access to all the support and care that they need to live a fulfilled life. And that's quite a big ask. Spinal cord injury comes with a complex set of needs. It's not just a medical condition, it is a disability. So that it impacts all sorts of areas to do with your life, be it housing, transport, general access in the physical, work, your mental health. Sure. There's all sorts of things. It's not only about mobility. Most people know that you have spinal injury, perhaps you can't walk anymore. If it's higher up, perhaps you can't use your hands, but there's less of a recognition that it affects things like your bowels, your bladder, sexual function.
Sure.
So there's all of that stuff. It's quite complex. There's quite a big community. There's 60,000 of us at least in the UK. We're 2,500 people a year acquire a spinal cord injury. That's 7 a day. That's 1 every 3.5 hours.
That's scary, isn't it?
And so that's the charity. That's the problem. That's what we're aiming to do. And we've been around for 50 odd years, and so we're one of the well-established charities, and we've got a long history, not only in terms of service provision, but also in terms of campaigning on this issue and on wider disability rights issues. And recently, the strategy has kind of recognised that one organisation isn't going to be able to cover all the ground that needs covering. So it's not only about the work that we do directly with our membership and the community, but it's us actually being a coordinator of a whole network of providers that collectively can deliver that vision that everybody gets everything they need.
Okay. So you are working down into the local communities then, presumably?
Yes, we've got a regional based, we are regionally based, so that every region has a support coordinator. We're getting to the situation where every region will have a nurse. Our vision is to have a mental health practitioner and a therapist in each region as well. But also we're beginning to look at what we do face-to-face and what we do digitally and what we do virtually. And we're looking at how we design that national virtual resource so that we can upscale our reach and impact.
Okay. And your role now is?
So I am the director of programs, which I There are three directors, one who looks after finance and ops, one that gets all the money in, and me who spends all the money. Which is a lovely position to be in. But essentially I look after the services, which is all of the nurses, mental health practitioners, the support coordinators. We've got advocates, we've got front support line staff, and all of our comms and campaigns team. So that's all that we would expect from a communications team in terms of marketing, press, digital, physical press, but also on the campaign side, we've got somebody that's permanently based in Parliament, and a campaigns manager, and also a kind of a guy that works out our policy statements and does a lot of research behind that as well.
Right. So that sounds like the kind of job that you need to be paying an awful lot of attention to what's going on in the world at large, because what programs you come up with will, to an extent, be driven by the popular beat of the social drum that's out in the world. So that's, I mean, that's not exactly a little job, is it?
No, it's quite wide focus. Fortunately, people, it's oft commented that's a very wide remit. But my joke return is, yes, but I'm not the CEO of ASDA. So it's a big job, but for a smaller organisation, and with all big jobs, it's down to the team you've got. So, and I've got a very good team, which is, and I'm coming into an organisation that has a great heritage, that it's on a transformation journey, and I'm coming in I'm joining the train, as it were. Okay. So yes, it's a big job, and that's part of the fun of it. What I find really interesting is that it's not entirely arbitrary. Whilst it seems, what are you talking about? You were head of lighting in an architectural company, and now you're director of programs for, what is the connection? The connection is I have a spinal injury, so that helps in terms of lived expertise. I have my commercial experience. We were talking about, becoming a manager and less design. Well, that's very true. And actually, a lot of that experience is relevant. I was responsible for profit and loss. I was responsible for marketing. I was responsible for advocating for our department and for the profession generally, internationally. And also, as part of BDP, one of my projects was as writing the technology strategy for the restoration and renewal of Parliament. Well, a lot of that future gazing in terms of technology and digitalisation and virtualisation is directly applicable.
Sure.
And then there was the NHS board experience as well, where we're trying to go in and change, work with the NHS to change the system, the way in which they rehabilitate people with spinal cord injury, and also the way in which they treat people with a pre-existing condition when they come in for a shoulder op or heart operation, or some medical condition that's not directly connected with their spinal cord injury. So that NHS experience has been really, really important for me to actually understand what is the beast that I'm trying to engage with, and how's the best way of trying to do it. Okay. And then the other thing is that's also has always been a delight for me, is as a lighting designer, is that you go into a whole variety of different settings and try and understand the heartbeat of that organ, that system, so that you can create an environment that facilitates the task at hand and creates an atmosphere that supports that task. Well, here I am going into a whole series of organizations trying to understand how they heartbeat and how they tick, so that I can engage with them meaningfully. And so there are a lot of parallels to what I've done and what I'm doing now.
Sure. So is the funding, well, I think in this day and age you say, is the funding safe? But what I'm actually getting is, does the funding come from independent sources, or are you reliant upon the institutions?
No, we don't have very much institutional funding at all at the moment, and the debate within us is how much are we going to seek. Most of it through voluntary contributions, but it's quite a diversified and quite a sustainable funding model that we look for grants, corporate donors, law firms have a big stake in this, as do medical supply companies. So there are a number of companies which would give money. There are a number of charitable grant making organizations that give money. And then there's charitable donations from individuals and events and all those kind of things that you would, you know.
But it means that you can be that critical friend to the NHS rather than being
Yes,
a client.
it's client.
Yeah.
Yes. Although what is interestingly is beginning to happen now, more and more as we provide services to the NHS and on behalf of the NHS, we're asking the questions, well, we would be a very cost-effective way of delivering some services, and therefore that thinking is beginning to happen as to perhaps how do we pay. And to be fair, the NHS has given us some certain grant income. That has happened already.
Right.
Kind of one-off project funding rather than regular. So that, but we're not reliant on it, which I think is a good thing.
Yes. Okay. Right. Hey, we've been talking for 20 odd minutes, and I think people's patience eventually runs out, especially if they've probably finished their coffees now. Okay. Shouldn't we just be getting back to work? So I'm going to say, hey, Mark, thank you very much. Let's sort of keep the conversation going as the months move on, and you can come back and tell us some more. And we all obviously wish you fantastically well. It'll still be good to see you if you're down in London in November for around Light 23. Come in and say hello to everybody, because as you say, there are careers and there are careers, and there are ways of doing things, and the ways of doing things they cross borders. So
yeah, I mean, I don't really want to say. I definitely don't want to say bye, sayonara, and never. There are so many great people, so many good friendships I've made, and I still. What is interesting about this period is how much I'm forgetting and how much I'm remembering, and I definitely want to keep that conversation going.
Okay, well, that's great. Okay, right. For all of you who've been listening to this, I hope that you've learned something about Spinal Injuries Association. You might want to sort of see to what you can do to maybe put a little bit of money in there, put their money away, so that Mark can get his programs up and running, because that is what it is going to be all about. So, Mark, thank you very much for your time, and we will pick up again. As I say, we will speak again later on in the year. Cheers.